Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. A very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. And welcome back to Big Mouth and episode 20, yes, 20 of Smallville, the Saviour of Superman. You can follow me on Twitter at MoviesTVMad. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Please like the videos if you like them. Episode 20. I'm so happy doing these videos. You know, I'm a massive Smallville fan. And today we're talking about Metallo. Yes, Smallville was achievements upon achievements all the time. And they gave us Connor Kent and they gave us Metallo. They gave us John Corbin. And it was a great version. Brian Austin Green played the part from Beverly Hills 90210. And shockingly, he did a really, really good job. But I think Kelly and Brian, as the showrunners, did a great job with Metallo. He was totally like you would imagine him in Smallville. Now, he doesn't exactly look like the Metallo we see in the comics, but he's got the kryptonite heart. And he's certainly got issues with Clark's blur, because he blames the blur for the death of his wife, and I think his daughter or son or whatever it was. Because he saved some people or something, and then something happened, and then that caused the death of his wife and child. So he's got no time for the blur, but he's not a deep, dark villain here. He's just an ordinary person where this outrageous thing happens to him, and he's got to deal with it. And I actually just watched the teaser to that, the opener of that episode, Metallo. It is so good. The reveal of him being Metallo, having the kryptonite heart, so good. You know, people can say what they want about Smallville, but I know that Supergirl had a version of Metallo, if I remember rightly. Compared to Smallville, it was absolute shite. Smallville always, even though Smallville did things slightly different in their own Smallvillian way, they always ended up being awesome. And Metallo was no exception. So good. And the relationship that John Corbin has got with Lois, and she even tries to help him when he's desperate. Now, in Smallville, it was the Kandorians that created Metallo. It was them who saved John's life. It was them who gave him the kryptonite heart. If I remember rightly, I think it was the Kandorians. I haven't seen season 9 properly for a while now. But if I remember rightly, it was Zod and the Kandorians, which was just awesome. The whole thing, which for me was an awesome premise. And it just goes to show you the evolution of this show, as I was saying yesterday. It never stayed the same. It always evolved. And when you think about everything they did, and I mean, I've got to do an episode of Smallville, the Saviour of Superman, where we totally talk about absolute justice. Now, I've spoken about it before, but I want to talk about it more thoroughly, because that was another great achievement. Metallo was great, and he didn't just appear in one episode. Of course, John Corbin was in episode 1. Then we see his origin in episode 2. He goes up against the Blur. And then we see him later on in the season. I think we see him 2 or 3 times, actually. And it's really great. There's even an episode where somehow Clark goes really dark. I think it's Zod tricks him into using red kryptonite or whatever he does. And him and Zod are like together, working together. It's an awesome episode. And it's actually John Corbin's Metallo who has to save Clark from himself. And it's absolutely fantastic. It really is a great episode. So, you know, the usage of how they use these DC characters was amazing. But I've got nothing but love for Brian Austin Green's version of Metallo. It was so good and so expansive. And it worked in so many ways. And, you know, this is what's great about comic book characters. You can give them your spin. Sometimes the fans hate it. Sometimes the fans think, well, actually, this is better than the comics. Normally, I would say diehard comic book fans don't like origins being changed. But I think if you hit the nail on the head, most of the time, I think they're pleased and they kind of appreciate what you're trying to do, at least. Because it is really difficult to translate a book or a comic book or a graphic novel or whatever you want to call them into a TV show or a film. But Smallville made their kind of stance early on very blatant that this wasn't going to be copy and pasted. That Smallville was going to be a different universe, that it was a pre-Superman story, but also you could tell that Smallville was definitely an Elseworld story. This wasn't an Earth 1 story, no question about that. So I feel that Metallo was done so well, and I want to know your opinion about Metallo. How do you feel they dealt with Metallo and developed him on Smallville? I thought it was great.